She walked away from the man who loved her when he had nothing, for a man who had everything except love. She thought she had upgraded, but life doesn't reward betrayal. It punishes it. He gave her everything, his heart, his time, his future. She gave him silence and a divorce paper. Now, years later, she's back, broken, rejected, and alone. But what she doesn't know is, the man she left behind is no longer the same. He's richer, wiser, and colder. What will happen when their paths cross again? What secret has she been hiding all these years? And will he forgive or finally let go? This African drama will break your heart, shake your soul. And just when you think you've seen it all, the ending will leave you breathless. Stay until the end. You won't believe what happens next. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and comment your country below. Before the betrayal, before the silence, before everything fell apart, there was love, not the kind with flower petals and vacation photos, but the kind that wakes you at 5 a.m. to make pap for two, the kind that prays before sleep and laughs while sharing a single spoon. In a small, peeling apartment on the outskirts of Ajegunle, Kunle and Amara had nothing but each other, and somehow that was enough. He was a mechanic. She sold Puff Puff by the roadside. Every morning, Kunle would walk her halfway to her stand, holding her worn-out cooler like it was treasure. Every evening, she would wait outside his workshop with a nylon bag of food, sometimes rice, sometimes just gari and groundnut. One night, after a long day filled with sweat and sun, Kunle sat beside her on the mattress, their dinner placed between them. "You know, one day we'll laugh at all this," Kunle said, blowing on the hot iba. Amara smiled faintly. "You've been saying that since we married." "Because it's true. I see it." He pointed at the cracked ceiling. "This roof? One day it will be chandelier. This mattress? One day we'll have a king-sized bed with 4 pillows." She chuckled, teasing, "You and your dreams. How will you do it, Mr. Mechanic?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "With these hands." His hands rough, oil-stained, yet somehow always gentle when they touched her, reached across the small space between them. He cupped her cheek. "I may not be rich now, Amara, but one thing I will never be poor in is love for you." She blinked fast. That night, they made promises in whispers and kisses, that no matter how long the journey, they would walk it together. That no matter how little they had, they would never let the world break them apart. Amara believed him with her whole heart, because at that time, love was enough. They didn't have much, but what they had, they cherished. A small table made of leftover plywood, 2 cups, 1 chipped. A calendar from 3 years ago still hanging proudly on the wall. It didn't mark time, it marked hope. Every Sunday afternoon, after church, Kunle and Amara would sit on the veranda, legs stretched out, their backs leaning against each other like they were bricks in the same wall. Kunle always spoke of tomorrow, of the garage he would own, the buses he would buy, the apprentices he would train. And Amara? She'd listen, not because she doubted, but because she believed more than he did. "You'll be a big man one day," she said one evening, handing him a plate of beans. "People will call you Oga Kunle, and you'll pretend not to notice." He laughed, a soft, tired laugh, the kind only dreamers knew. "And you, Madam Kunle, will sit in front of the shop eating jollof and threatening to sack my boys if they misbehave." They laughed together. In that moment, the world was full of color, not because they had money, but because they had each other. But dreams are not immune to reality. The landlord came knocking, 3 months' rent. No excuses. Amara's Puff Puff business had slowed, the main road was under repair. Kunle's garage work had been cut in half. The Danfo owners were now going to a younger mechanic with a modern signboard and a social media page. One night, Kunle came home with grease still in his eyes. His face was dull. His hands trembled as he sat on the floor. Amara crouched beside him. "What's wrong?" "I was offered a job," he said quietly. "Good pay, in Ibadan, but I'd have to go alone for some months." Her smile disappeared. The silence between them said everything. They couldn't afford to be apart emotionally or financially. He looked at her. "Do you believe in me, Amara?" She nodded instantly. "Even when you don't believe in yourself," he exhaled. A slow, deep breath like he was drawing courage from her lungs. They held hands that night in silence. Their bodies tired, but their hearts tied together by something poverty couldn't touch. But outside, the world was changing. Fast and without warning, Kunle took the job in Ibadan. 2 months turned to 4. Phone calls became shorter. Conversations less playful. The laughter they once shared now lived in memories Amara didn't like visiting. Back in Lagos, she woke up alone. Opened her puff-puff stall alone. Closed it alone. And every time she walked past the boutique across the street where women came out in lace and heels, smiling with soft-spoken drivers behind the wheel, she felt something she didn't want to name: envy, longing, resentment. It started small, a sigh when Kunle sent less than expected, a frown when his voice sounded tired instead of excited. Then came the questions in her head. Is this all there is? Will I spend my youth waiting for a future that never arrives? Does love still count when my stomach is empty? Her friend Sade noticed. "Amara, you're too beautiful to suffer like this," Sade said one afternoon, fanning herself under the umbrella of her phone accessory shop. "You're young, smart, and loyal to a fault, but loyalty doesn't buy land." Amara laughed it off, but the words stuck. Not because they were true, but because part of her wished they weren't. Then came Chief Durojayi. They simply called him Chief Duroja, a name that turned heads and silenced gossip when it rolled off lips. He was a man of presence, power, precision, always in crisp agbada, wrist heavy with gold, car tinted like secrets. He began buying puff-puff from her in the evenings, not because he liked it, but because he liked the way she smiled. He was kind, smooth, and always smelled like foreign cologne. He asked about her day, told her she was too radiant to be hidden behind a roadside tray. Said things like, "A flower like you deserves a palace, not a pavement." At first, Amara ignored him. She even told Kunle about one rich customer with too many proverbs. But Kunle didn't laugh. He just said, "Be careful, Amara. The devil doesn't always wear red." And that was the beginning of the silence. Kunle had changed too. Work had hardened him. The man who once wrote her poems in Greece on napkins now only talked about loans and deadlines. She missed the old him. He missed the older, but neither of them said it out loud. And in that silence, cracks began to form, invisible to the world, but loud enough to echo in their hearts. On a hot afternoon, a nylon bag filled with groceries she didn't ask for. An envelope untouched, unopened left on her table when she went to urinate behind the kiosk. Amara returned and froze. Inside, fresh Naira notes, neatly arranged. No note, no message. Just money, waiting. She looked across the street. There he was, Chief Duroja, leaning on the hood of his black Lexus. Sunglasses on, smiling. She left the money on the table all day. Didn't touch it, didn't spend it. But when the sun set and hunger knocked, she held it tightly like it might burn her fingers and walked home fast, ashamed, but relieved. The next day, she avoided him. kept her head down, sold quickly, closed early. But Chief Doroja was patient. Temptation doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just waits quietly. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said one evening, stepping out of his car. "I just want to help. That's all." She didn't reply. "I know struggle when I see it. And I know loyalty too. You've waited long enough, Amara. Tell me, when will you start living for yourself?" That night, her thoughts wouldn't let her sleep. Kunle hadn't called in 2 days. She sent him a voice note. He didn't reply. She stared at the small curtain that separated her kitchen from her sleeping mat and wondered, is this what my 20s were meant to look like? The next time Chief Doroja offered her a ride home, she said no. But her voice wasn't strong. It was the kind of no that feared it would soon become a maybe. He didn't insist, just smiled and said, "Soon." And soon came. One rainy evening, her umbrella tore in the wind. Her slippers snapped in the mud. She stood under a shop canopy, drenched and shivering. His Lexus pulled up slowly, as if summoned by fate itself. "Get in," he said through the window. Just 2 words. She looked around. No Okada, no bus, no one. She got in. The car smelled of leather and power. Warm, safe, too safe. He didn't speak much, just drove, smoothly, calmly, like he knew this road, this moment, had always been coming. He dropped her at her gate and handed her a branded nylon bag. She shook her head. "I can't. Just food, nothing more." She opened it later. It wasn't just food. There was perfume, a new wrapper, and a new phone. And underneath it all, a card with one sentence, "You don't have to struggle to be seen." She stared at it for a long time. Then, she turned her old phone back on, scrolled through her chats, clicked on Kunle's name, typed 3 words. But then, she deleted them and turned the phone off again. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, something else had started to drip. A quiet erosion of loyalty, of love, of self. She told herself it wasn't a decision, that it just happened. Before long, Amara stopped resisting and started adjusting. Chief Doroja had a way of making sin feel like security. His world was wrapped in comfort. The boutique he bought her came with staff and signage, Amara's elegance. The apartment came with keys she didn't ask for, and a wardrobe full of clothes she never imagined herself wearing. Kunle faded, not in one blow, but in pieces. She stopped checking his WhatsApp last seen, stopped waiting for his voice notes, stopped praying for him at night. Even her dreams stopped remembering him. When Sade asked, "What about Kunle?" she smiled softly, like someone recalling a distant memory. "Kunle will be fine," she said. "He deserves someone who can suffer with him better than I could." But deep down, she knew. She hadn't left because she stopped loving him. She left because she was tired of hoping. Because hope, when it goes too long without results, becomes a burden heavier than regret. Chief Doroja wasn't her future. He was her escape, her shortcut, her silence. One evening, while sipping wine on a rooftop lounge in Victoria Island, she looked over the city lights and said to herself, maybe this is what success looks like. But something was missing. Laughter. Not the polite chuckle she gave Chief when he bragged about his business empire, but the real kind, the kind she once shared with a young mechanic who made her feel like treasure in a plastic chair. She shook the thought away. It was easier not to remember, because remembering meant grieving. And grieving meant admitting that she'd buried something still very much alive inside her. So she wore her makeup well, took selfies, posted smiles, signed delivery papers. But every time her phone buzzed and it wasn't Kunle, she felt a slight ache in her chest.
Still, she never reached out again. Because in her world now, vulnerability was weakness, and pride was the only armor she had left.
It was a Thursday afternoon. The sun was high, but the wind felt strange, like it carried a secret meant just for her. Amara was inside her boutique, adjusting a mannequin by the glass, when the bell above the door jingled softly. "Welcome," she said without turning. Then she heard it, the voice that once made her heart race. Low, steady, familiar. "Amara." She froze. She turned around slowly, and there he was, Kunle, standing just inside the doorway, eyes fixed on her. He looked different, not just in clothes or posture, but in presence. The boy she once left behind had become a man, one she barely recognized. Her throat tightened. "Kunle." He looked around the boutique, the polished shelves, the clean lighting, the gold-plated name sign above the counter. He nodded slowly. "So, this is your shop?" She nodded back, unsure what to say. "It's beautiful," he said, scanning everything with unreadable eyes. "You did it. You finally got the life you wanted." She wanted to smile. She couldn't. He stepped in farther. The air between them was thick with silence, not awkwardness, but history. "I didn't come to fight," he said calmly. "I just wanted to ask one question. Why did you leave me?" It hit her like thunder. "Kunle," she whispered, "I begged you to hold on. I left Lagos to build something real for us. I struggled, starved, sweated for a future, our future." She blinked quickly, staring at the floor. "I came back once," he said. "I saw you. With him." Her head snapped up. "You were laughing. You looked free. And I told myself maybe that's what you needed all along." He looked down briefly, jaw clenched, then back at her. "But I never got an answer. No goodbye. No, I'm sorry, just silence." She took a breath. "I was tired, Kunle, of waiting, of hoping. You were far. I was lonely. And he was here." A beat of silence. "Do you love him?" he asked. She hesitated. "I thought I did," she said. "But it doesn't feel like love anymore. It feels like survival." His eyes softened. "I wasn't perfect, Amara, but I never stopped believing in you. In us." She looked up. "Are you married?" He gave a sad smile. "I couldn't bring myself to try again. Not really." That broke her. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I didn't mean to lose you." "But you did," he replied softly. "And now we're two strangers, standing in a dream we once shared." He turned to leave, then paused. "I forgive you, Amara, but I've changed too, and I don't know if my heart still remembers how to come back." Then, without another word, he walked out. And Amara? She stood there surrounded by wealth, comfort, and everything she once thought she wanted, and felt the full weight of what she'd truly lost. Weeks had passed since Kunle's visit. His words still echoed in her chest like a bell she couldn't unring. She tried to call him once. Just once. The line rang, then went dead, blocked. Not out of spite, but finality. A few days later, she got the message she didn't expect but somehow knew was coming. Chief Doroja had relocated abroad. No warning, no farewell, no transfer of business, just a short, cold message from one of his aides. "Chief wishes you all the best." That was it. The apartment? Gone. The boutique lease? In his name, all along. The car? Repossessed. Suddenly, Amara found herself packing boxes. Not designer shoes, but the remnants of a life she never truly owned. She moved back into her cousin's cramped flat in Mushin. No AC, no staff, no silence to mask the regret. One evening, she was scrolling through Facebook when a photo stopped her heart. Kunle. He was at a foundation launch, standing beside a new woman. She wore a simple green dress and smiled with quiet confidence. The caption read, "Engineer Kunle Ayeni and his fiancée Morayo at the Hope Rising Youth Project launch." Amara stared for a long time. They looked happy, not flashy, not loud, just peaceful, a kind of peace she once had. Back when they ate soaked Gary on the floor and prayed before sleeping, she didn't cry immediately. But that night, under the thin ceiling fan and the buzzing of a dying bulb, the tears came. Not because she wanted Kunle back, but because she finally understood she hadn't just lost a man. She lost a life that was real. She traded love for luxury, faithfulness for comfort. And in the end, she was left with neither. Just a full wardrobe and an empty soul. She sat by the window, watching the street boys chase an Okada, her eyes misty, her voice barely a whisper. If only I had waited. But regrets are not time machines. They are echoes, and hers would follow her for a very long time. In the end, Kunle forgot about Amara. All the memories, all the sacrifices, all the promises, buried like they never happened. He stood proudly beside his new bride, Morayo, smiling, radiant, fulfilled. But somewhere in a quiet room, Amara watched it all, through tears and silent pain. Would you leave the one who once loved you deeply, just for money or comfort? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Amara's shoes? This is not just a story, it's a mirror of the choices many face every day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deeply emotional African drama stories. Tap the notification bell, because the next story might just be yours.